Hello everyone, I'm DeAngelo with That's Entertainment, and this is your video review of Legendary by Spark Unlimited. Monsters have long been the bane of gamers, from ghosts and goblins to aliens on distant planets. Most of the time, these enemies fit into the environment that surrounds them. Legendary is aiming to show that you can take monsters from old mythology and place them in a modern-day landscape and still have a good time. Creatures from Jewish, Russian, and English folklore, among many others, make appearances in the game, hell-bent on destroying the world around you. Does Legendary live up to its name, or are the allusions to a good game simply a myth? The story of Legendary begins with the employment of your character, Charles Deckard, a professional thief for hire. A wealthy collector of rare and illegally gained treasures named Orman Le Fay has directed Deckard to infiltrate a New York museum and open a box that was retrieved from the bottom of the ocean. Little does Deckard know, the box is actually Pandora's box, the mythic item that Zeus gave to the wife of Prometheus, with instructions never to open, lest she release all the miseries of the world. The character of Deckard, however, silent except for log entries in his PDA, is never fleshed out. He seems like the most generic of heroes, and you never truly get a feel for his story. Even some articles of subtext explaining what has been happening to characters you never even meet are strewn throughout the broken streets of New York and London. Besides that flaw, the story doesn't suffer all too much. It isn't the next great epic, but at least it manages to flow instead of getting hung up on details.
A secret society called the Council.
Starting to think maybe it's the end of the world, you know? Feel like I should have gone to church more often.
Legendary is a straight-up, old-style first-person shooter. You've been playing this kind of game since the Nintendo 64 days, with GoldenEye and Turok. The levels are all fairly linear, and the enemies are all pretty straightforward. There's a feeling of familiarity with the game, which actually helps to bolster its appeal. However, many of the flaws with the game rest heavily within the gameplay. The controls are a bit spotty, which leads you into some rough patches when you're toiling with multiple enemies. Jumping is awkward, and for some reason, so is aiming at human enemies. Checkpoints are not at the most logical of areas, which can be a pain, especially when there are a lot of different ways to die. In addition to this, the usually fast-paced action is broken up sporadically by switches that need to be activated to proceed forward. And even that wouldn't be so bad if they were placed with more of a basis on gameplay in mind. Instead, it feels like an unnecessary gap in the pacing. Coupled with this, you never really get the feel for your character being a master thief. That context of his backstory is a moot point after the initial opening of Pandora's box. It's not all bad in Legendary, though. Thanks to some great style choices presented by the game, you'll be addicted to finishing the story. Whether it's a gargantuan golem terrorizing Times Square, or a group of brutal fairies possessing a soda machine to do battle with you, everything is done well. The graphics on top of the style fail a little more than not, however. As said earlier, the main character is bland. This carries over to his character model as well. And while the buildings and cars look great when they're breaking apart, the textures seem a little bland. The sound is more in tune with the game. Though repetitive, some good choices were made with the songs. Sound effects are telling and help you round out what enemies you'll be facing. The voiceover work is a little disappointing, as well as most of the character acting all around, but it's the monsters that take center stage in this game, and they do it well. Unless you want to fight through the sometimes unwieldy controls on a higher difficulty, there aren't too many reasons you'd want to play through Legendary again. Sure, there may be some other achievements you want to acquire, but other than that, the game is a little dry. It does, however, have a multiplayer component, and there are several modes of play. Legendary, despite several good concepts, falters where it could have flown. The ideas presented in the game have never been implemented flawlessly, and with a little bit more refinement, Spark Unlimited could have had a masterpiece on their hands. Unfortunately, due to controls that can lead to quick deaths and frustration, some odd design choices, and a forgettable story that drew on incredible folklore, Legendary misses its mark and is relegated to the bargain bin. While you can still find plenty of enjoyment from the game, this is not the next big franchise. That's Entertainment awards Legendary a score of 7 out of 10.